I now declare you divorced.
I know what you're thinking. Emma, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Don't be so dramatic. Wrong. This percentage is so outdated. It's 80% now. Also, I'm not upset because my parents are getting a divorce, but because… Wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. And make sure you like this video and subscribe to MSA. I was born in a very poor country. But luckily, my parents were entrepreneurial geniuses. They built a business empire early on, so I never had a taste of real poverty like others here, and was practically raised with a golden spoon in my mouth. Mom doted on me and was super attentive, but Dad wasn't around much, so we'd never grown close. And when I was 11, he just announced out of the blue that he wanted a divorce and was moving to the US. He left just like that, without even paying child support. The most traumatic part was that he took our wealth and my lifestyle with him. And I had to eventually give up all the expensive stuff that had made me who I was. What do you mean, let's go eat hot dogs in the park? We're not hobos. Should we be sleeping on park benches next and using newspapers for blankets? I'm just saying, we can hang out and not spend money all the time. But apparently, we couldn't, and that's the first time I noticed I had no real friends around me. I switched to a public school, which was so stinky and embarrassing. Can I have one local lobster, please? Oh, yes, of course, milady. 1 second. Oops, guess we ran out of those. Mashed potatoes and greasy chicken on Mondays. Remember it. It was a hard reality check, but over time I learned a lot and got really street smart. Do you have seafood today? Mashed potatoes and greasy chicken on Mondays, sweet pea. Remember it. By the time I graduated from high school, I was a strong, savage girl who would not let anyone cross her. I had saved up for a flight to the US, and I was ready for revenge. Daddy, here I come. Dad was the owner of a huge restaurant chain here, so he was easy to locate. I wasn't sure exactly what I was gonna do yet, but I wanted to get close and find some dirt on him that I could use. And even though I was 99.9% sure he wouldn't recognize me, I'd still gotten a serious makeover to avoid the risk. Hi, I'm Emily. Are you looking for waitresses? Yes, we are hiring. We'd be happy to try you out. And so I began working there with no clear plan in sight. I just knew a salary didn't qualify for revenge or even child support. One day, as I was polishing the cutlery in the kitchen, I heard Katie crying while she was on the phone with someone who was clearly yelling at her.
Poor Katie. Her husband is a nut job.
This happens often? Why is he yelling at her?
It's probably something to do with work. He is the boss after all.
The boss? As in…
Yep, that's his wife.
Wife? He remarried? I must have fainted, because the next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor and Colin was checking my pulse.
Gee, you scared me.
What happened?
I said Katie was the boss's wife and you went pale and fainted. So you tell me what happened.
Oh, I think I just didn't drink enough water today, that's all.
Sure, okay.
Colin and I became the closest co-workers. He sort of became like a guardian angel to me.
Your lunch today has all the nutrition you need. Can't have you faint in my kitchen again. Although
what?
Well, I haven't performed CPR in ages. I might need a refreshment course.
You know that doesn't count as a kiss, right? It only makes you a creep.
Emily, you pervert! How dare you go there? I was merely suggesting you help me practice a life-saving technique.
Ha ha ha. Colin, you know, if you want, you can ask me out like a normal human being. As I was walking back home that evening, grinning from ear to ear that I finally had a boyfriend who seemed to like me for me, I remembered that he actually didn't know the real me. He didn't know my name was Emma or that our boss was my dad. Over the next few weeks, I kept looking for an opportunity to tell him, but there never seemed to be a right time. One day, Katie told us there was an extra shift available for a waitress at their house because they were hosting a party, and I jumped at the opportunity. Bingo! As I entered their mansion that evening, I felt a sense of nostalgia, and a realization dawned on me. Dad's life hadn't stopped or changed like mine after he'd moved on. He didn't actually lose anything. For him, Mom and I were just a pit stop.
Magnificent, isn't it?
Oh, hey, yeah, it really is. When we went inside, Katie welcomed us warmly. She was always kind, but in her home, she seemed more warm and maternal. It felt like we were guests, not employees. Kids, come show Emily around and put her bag in the locker rooms.
Hey, Emily. Nice to meet you.
Hi. As they showed me around, I felt like they were living the life that was stolen from me. What a lovely house. Oh, you've won so many math and art competitions, I see. Did your mom take you to all of these?
Both Mom and Dad, they never miss a competition.
Oh, Dad too? That's nice. My dad never took me to anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sure he was just busy. Dad is busy sometimes, but he always makes it up to us.
So, he did know how to be a real dad. What did these kids have that I didn't? Why couldn't he love me like he loved them? I sat in the locker room alone, staring at the wall and just overthinking every memory I had of us when Colin came in, and suddenly I just burst into tears.
Emily, what's wrong?
Colin, I have to tell you something. And I found myself spilling my whole story and the reason I came to work for Dad. I spared no detail. Colin's mouth had dropped to the floor. He was silent for a few seconds after I finished, then looked up at me.
Honestly, good for you.
What? You're not upset that I lied to you?
No one knows this, but my real name is Samson. I hated it and hated my parents too. So I changed it and I left home at 18. I wouldn't say the real me is Samson, who was an angry teen at home. Colin is who I choose to be every day, so that's who I really am.
He was so right. The decisions I made daily were what defined me.
Know what? He deserves anything bad that comes his way. I want in.
Silent moonlight above, heartbeats, whisper of love, nights a blanket so still, stars are bending to will. In the shadows we find sparks that light up the park. In the shadows we find whispered secrets entwined. Closer we dance, lost in this trance. Mystery calls through the night, hearts that take flight, motion so tight. Mystery calls through the night, hearts that take flight, motion so tight.
During the party, I managed to slip for a couple of minutes into Dad's office. I wanted to find something I could use against him, so I scanned the room well to make myself familiar with it, then left. Since it was the holiday season, I'd have plenty of waitressing opportunities at his house to sneak in again. I'd noticed that he had a safe in his office, and every time I snuck in, I tried every possible 4-digit combination I could think of. His kids' birthdays, his wife's, his own, but nothing worked. Until one day, I randomly tried my birthday, and the lock clicked open. Wow, now that's a surprise. Did he still think about me? Maybe he did love me. For a minute, I felt guilty and didn't want to go on with my plan. But then I remembered, if he actually loved me, he would have recognized me by now. So no, he probably used my birthday because it was the last thing anyone would ever know or think of. Thanks again, Daddy. Inside, I saw piles and piles of money. I wanted to snatch it all and run back home. But I knew that only works in movies. Instead, I started stealing small portions. I did not feel any guilt. Dad was plain awful to everyone around him, including his own wife. Then one day, he surprised us with a visit at the restaurant. What are you doing here, dear?
Well, it's my restaurant, isn't it? I'm here to check if everything is running smoothly.
That's what I'm here for. Why can't you let me run the restaurant without constantly trying to control everything?
Listen here, pretty face. I know you got bored as a housewife and you want to play manager, but I have real work to do here. So why don't you go for a stroll as I check everything out?
No, this is
I wasn't asking.
Katie stormed out of the restaurant on the verge of tears as he continued to check everything up close. Everyone was terrified of him, especially me.
You over there!
Me? This was the first time he had spoken to me directly in years.
Yes, what's your name?
I felt sweaty and tongue-tied, but then I felt Colin moving and standing behind me. He put his hand on my shoulder to let me know he had my back. Emily, sir.
Emily. Are you new here?
Been here a few months now, sir. Just then, two shady-looking men walked into the restaurant and saved me from the investigation. Dad left me alone and followed them into a small room at the back of the restaurant. Sometime later, the head cook was called in too, and when he walked out, he looked flustered. An hour later, Dad and the shady men came out of the room, shook hands, and then all of them left. What's that all about?
I'll try to find out.
Later that night, I just couldn't fall asleep. My dad had looked me in the eye, talked to me, and he didn't recognize me at all. How do you recover from that? The next day, Colin came rushing to me, looking ready to burst.
Emma, we got it.
Really? What did you find out?
Yesterday, he made a deal to import illegal seafood. He wants to use that in dishes without disclosing it to customers. The head chef and sous chef are in on it. I overheard them talking.
Bingo! I knew he'd be up to something crooked. Now we have to think of a plan to expose him. I wanted to teach him a lesson, and also see if he would flee and leave his new family when things got rough for him. But later that day, his kids came in for lunch, and they had prepared holiday gifts for the staff. My gift had a special drawing of me. No one else had one. Oh, thank you. It's lovely. The kids love you, Emily. They keep saying how you treat them like normal kids, not the boss's kids. When she said this, I had a flashback to my own childhood. A lonely, spoiled kid with no real friends. No one treated me like a normal kid when he was around. Just a few days later, when I was working at his house again, Dad came barging into the kitchen furiously. He had discovered that someone had been stealing from his safe.
Count your days, whoever you are. Did you think that a house this big doesn't have security cameras? Once I get the tapes, it's over for you.
OMG, security cameras? My face turned green and I felt nauseous.
What's wrong with you? Don't you dare puke in my kitchen!
I'm kind of sick, sir.
How often do you come to my house?
I've come a few times.
Maybe you stumbled into my study, found something you liked. Answer me!
Excuse me, sir? Stop. Stop grilling this poor girl. She would never do it.
How can you be so sure?
Because I've asked her to grab me things from my room 1,000,000 times, and she never touched any jewelry or clothes. So if she wanted to steal, she would have stolen 100 different things by now. Everyone was staring at the three of us confused, but not as confused as I was. Nothing that Katie said was true. Why was she defending me?
Katie, these kinds of people don't deserve your kindness. We'll wait for the tapes in the meantime.
These kind of people? It echoed over and over in my head. Ugh, how I wanted to say, your daughter, flesh and blood, Dad. But I held my tongue. I suffered that humiliation, but I never showed up to the restaurant again. I texted Katie that I just couldn't work there anymore. I had stolen enough money, but I wasn't done with my revenge yet. Colin had managed to take photos of receipts in the cook's office, and it was all the proof I needed about Dad's illegal seafood purchases. I could go public and destroy him, and I would enjoy it. But at the same time, whenever I imagined his downfall, I only saw his kids being upset or hurt. And every time they popped up in my head, an image of my broken, younger self also popped up. Cullen. I want him to suffer badly, but I feel if I go through with this, I'll be putting his family through what Mom and I went through, and I would feel guilty forever. I don't know what to do.
Baby, just by considering their feelings and future, you are already 100 times better than your dad. It's your decision. Do what feels most right to you.
And after much consideration, I decided to put the matter into someone else's hands. I asked Katie to meet me at a diner that night. Hello, Emma. Uh-oh, that's a bad start. I figured out your identity shortly after hiring you, and I wondered why you had chose to work for us. Now I know. You stole that money from us to get back at your dad. But don't worry, I destroyed the tapes. But then, why did you defend me? Emma, once I figured out who you were, I dug into his history and found out everything about you and your mom. Your dad is a jerk. He deserves this. Why are you with him then? For the money? You deserve so much better. The kids deserve so much better. I don't care about the money, but I don't want my children to go through what you guys went through. I want to wait until they're older before getting a divorce. He is a mean husband and partner, but I can't deny that he is a great dad to the kids. I understand, but in case you change your mind, take this. Do as you please with this information. Katie's eyes grew wide as she realized I'd handed her proof against Dad. I didn't know about this. Thanks, Emma. A few months later, I saw on the news that Dad was in prison and his restaurant license had been taken away because he was importing illegal food. And the same day, I got a text message from Katie. Thanks again, Emma. I needed it.